The lower unit is the last process of winterization before putting up for storage. The reason for that is because the whole time we've been flushing the engine, we've been fogging the engine, and we've also been treating the fuel system. And when we've been doing this, we've always had the muffs hooked up, running water through the lower unit. Okay? So by draining the oil into gear lube as our last step, we know that when we drain the oil, one of the things we're going to inspect for is moisture. So if we have no moisture, we can assume that there's no water intrusion to where we have to take the lower unit apart and do any repairs. So with that said, what we'll start with is the bottom plug. We'll remove that, and what we're going to do is drain the oil, gear lube, out of this lower unit. What we look for again is moisture, because that's going to tell us that we could have a leak internally that would lead to damage. The other thing we want to look for is metal shavings. Small metal shavings would be okay because that's typically normal gear wear. But what we want to look for is any larger chunks. That would lead us to believe that there's some gear damage. And if that's the case, truly we need to take the lower unit apart, inspect it, and see where the damage is coming from. Sierra offers a full range of GL5 rated marine grade gear lubes. Anything from a synthetic, full synthetic, synthetic blend, and our premium gear lube. Mind you, you have a lot of different applications from small horsepowers clear on up to our large engines and even our large outboards, say a 300 Yamaha HPDI. Our gear lubes are also formulated to prevent corrosion because the marine environment has a lot of humidity, which will leave a lot of corrosion. Okay, so let's get on to the filling up of our lower unit. Now that we've had it all drained out, we also offer different type of applications so that we can get the gear lube into the lower unit. Now, we don't want to fill from the top going down because of a small transfer hole that could fool you and not allow you to get enough gear lube into the lower unit. So what we want to do is actually fill from the bottom going up. We'll remove the top vent and filled plug. We'll remove the bottom, and we'll apply the oil through the bottom. And as we apply the oil, when the lower unit gets filled up, eventually you'll see the oil coming out of the top weep hole. When that's done, go ahead and put your plug in the lower unit, put the plug in the top unit, and now we're good to go for the winter. Now, when you're storing your boat in the winter, it's always a good idea to trim down. That way the bellows are not in a bent or an angled position that's going to allow the rubber to stay in a compressed position. The other good idea we want to do is take the prop off. Okay, so we remove the hardware, we remove the prop, and we want to use a spline grease to coat the prop real well. And this will keep any corrosion and moisture entering into the prop and the hub. Every 2 years, it's a good idea to remove the drive and inspect all the components. Sierra International offers quite a bit of service parts for this area. We have gimbal bearings, we have grease, marine grease, water resistant. We have spline grease, which is special for the drive shaft on these drives. We also have gaskets. What we need to do is inspect the gimbal bearing, the U-joints, the engine for alignment, and our bellows. These are some critical and key components to the drive system. The gimbal bearing sits up inside in the transom. We want to make sure it's free of corrosion and has a nice smooth roll to it, if you will, so we don't have any rough bumps in that. Otherwise, we're going to be back in replacing the gimbal bearing. We want to make sure that our bellows are nice and pliable, free from any cracks. And then we want to check the engine for alignment that comes out to where the drive shaft hooks in. We use this alignment tool for this purpose, because if we don't, it'll put undue load and pressure on the gimbal bearing and cause the gimbal bearing to go out, and we'll be pulling the drive back off. Once we get that all done and inspected, we need to clean for the gasket surface so we can put on new gaskets. Spline grease all over the splines. Grease up the U-joints if they're serviceable. Now we're ready to put the drive back on, get a few more years of good service out of this unit.